The moment Elena Voss spoke in perfect Sicilian, she signed her own death warrant. For 3 years, she'd been invisible, just another waitress in an upscale Manhattan restaurant where crime bosses made deals over wine that cost more than her rent. She kept her head down, her accent buried, her past locked away. Then Adrian DeLuca walked in, all arrogance and expensive cologne, and said something he thought she'd never understand. When she answered him in the language of his bloodline, everything shattered. Before we dive into how one sentence destroyed her carefully built lie, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city below. I want to see how far Elena's story travels. Let's begin. The thing about working in a restaurant where the clientele could have you killed before dessert arrives is that you learn to make yourself small. Not physically. Elena Voss stood 5'7" in her work flats, but in every other way that mattered. She learned to soften her footsteps, to keep her eyes down but not submissive, to anticipate needs before they were voiced. She learned which conversations to forget the moment she walked away from a table, which faces to never recognize if she saw them on the street. Most importantly, she learned never to understand anything she wasn't supposed to hear. La Stella Rosa sat on a quiet block in Tribeca, the kind of place that didn't advertise because it didn't need to. The awning was subtle, the windows tinted just enough to promise discretion. Inside, crystal chandeliers cast warm light over white tablecloths and fresh roses that were replaced twice daily. The wine list ran 30 pages. The menu had no prices. Elena had been working there for 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days. Not that she was counting. Table 4 needs water, Marco said, brushing past her in the narrow server station. He was 23, working his way through NYU, and blissfully unaware that the tips he bragged about came from men who'd murdered people over percentages smaller than 15. Elena picked up the crystal pitcher, checking her reflection in the polished chrome of the espresso machine. Dark hair pulled into a neat bun. Minimal makeup, the kind of face that was pleasant enough to be forgettable. She'd worked hard on that face. The real Elena, the one who'd existed before New York, before the fake social security number, and the identity purchased from a forger in Queens. That Elena had been memorable. Striking, her mother used to say. Dangerous, her father had warned. 3 years, 2 months, 16 days ago, she'd buried that girl and become this one. Table 4 was in the corner, the best table in the house. It always went to the same kind of people. Tonight it was occupied by 3 men in suits that probably cost more than her car, if she'd owned a car. She recognized one of them, Vincent Calabrese, a regular who always ordered the veal and left exactly 20%. Generous but not showy, smart. The other 2 were new. Gentlemen? Elena said softly, her voice carrying just enough to be heard but not enough to interrupt. She refilled their water glasses with practiced precision, the stream hitting the ice at an angle that prevented splashing. Thank you, sweetheart, Calabrese said without looking at her. The man across from him did look, though. And that's when Elena's carefully constructed world began to crack. He was younger than Calabrese, maybe mid-30s, with dark hair that was just slightly too long to be respectable and eyes that were several shades too cold to be kind. His suit was black, perfectly tailored, and he wore it with the casual arrogance of someone who'd never had to worry about whether he could afford something. A thin scar cut through his left eyebrow, the kind of mark that came from a knife, not an accident. Adrian DeLuca. She'd heard Marco mention the name earlier, had seen the entire staff snap to attention when word filtered back from the maitre d' that he'd be dining tonight. Is there anything else I can get for you? Elena asked, directing the question to the middle of the table, to no one in particular. No, we're good, the third man said. He was older, softer around the edges, trying too hard to seem comfortable in company that clearly outranked him. Elena nodded and turned to leave. Chista vinu e una merda. The words came from DeLuca, spoken in a dialect that most people in this restaurant, in this city, in this country, wouldn't recognize. Sicilian. Old Sicilian, the kind spoken in mountain villages where dialects shifted every 10 miles and outsiders were never truly welcome. This wine is shit. Elena's hand tightened on the pitcher. She kept walking. She'd heard worse in worse languages. She knew the rule. You didn't understand anything you weren't supposed to understand. But DeLuca kept talking, and something in his tone, the casual contempt, the absolute certainty that he was invisible to her, made the decision for her. E tu sei troppo stupito per sapere a differenza he continued to Calabrese. And you're too stupid to know the difference. Calabrese laughed, a forced sound that said he understood the words but not the insult buried in them. Elena stopped walking. Later, she'd wonder what made her do it. Pride, maybe. Or 3 years of biting her tongue. Or the simple human exhaustion of pretending to be less than she was. She turned around. "U barolo du 2015 havi bisogno di più tempo per ispirare," she said, her voice still soft but perfectly clear. "Ma si vo qualche cosa più morbido subito, suggerisce u Brunello. Menu tannini più accessibili, menu precuruso più un palato che non sappia aspettare." The 2015. Barolo needs more time to breathe. But if you want something softer immediately, I'd suggest the Brunello. Less tannic, more approachable, less demanding for a palate that doesn't know how to wait. The silence that followed wasn't quiet. It was the kind of silence that precedes violence, that hangs in the air like the moment before thunder. Every conversation in the nearby tables died mid-sentence. Silverware stopped moving. Even the kitchen seemed to hold its breath. Adrian DeLuca stared at her with an expression that Elena couldn't quite read. Shock, certainly. Anger, possibly. And something else, something that looked almost like recognition. "You speak Sicilian," he said finally, switching to English. His accent was faint but present, rounded vowels and clipped consonants. "I speak several languages," Elena replied, falling back into her careful, professional tone. "The Brunello is excellent. Would you like me to bring you a glass? Where did you learn it?" "The Brunello is from the Sicilian." He leaned back in his chair, studying her with the intensity of someone used to finding answers. "That's not something you pick up from a language app. That's village dialect, provincial, specific." Elena met his eyes. It was a mistake. She knew it the moment she did it, but she was already too far in to retreat. "My grandmother, she was from Sicily." "What village?" "Does it matter?" "Sicilici." "It does." Calabrese cleared his throat. "Adrian, the girl's just trying to do her job." "What village?" DeLuca repeated, ignoring him entirely. Elena felt the weight of every eye in the restaurant. The maitre d' hovering near the entrance, radiating disapproval. Marco frozen at the server station, probably calculating how much of her tip he could claim when she got fired. The chef, visible through the kitchen window, watching like this was dinner theater. "Corleone," she lied. It was a safe lie, the name famous enough that most people would accept it without question. DeLuca smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Mentitrice." Liar. "Excuse me?" "Corleone dialect is different, softer on the consonants. You speak like someone from the northeast. Messina, maybe. Or one of the mountain towns near Taormina." He tilted his head, which is interesting because there are maybe 3,000 people in the world who speak that particular variant, and most of them are dead or dying. Elena's pulse kicked up, but her face remained calm. 3 years of practice made it easy. "I should check on my other tables. What's your name?" "Elena." "Elena what?" "Voss." "Voss," he repeated, drawing out the word like he was tasting it. "German?" "Austrian, my grandfather." "So you're Sicilian on your mother's side, Austrian on your father's, and you just happen to work in a restaurant that caters to Italian families." He picked up his wine glass, studying the dark liquid. "What an interesting coincidence." "New York is full of coincidences." "Is it?" He took a sip, then set the glass down with deliberate care. "I don't believe in coincidences. I believe in patterns, and people, and the lies they tell when they're trying to hide something." Calabrese tried again. "Adrian, seriously, leave the girl alone." "Vincent, when I want your opinion, I'll beat it out of you." DeLuca's voice didn't change, didn't rise, but Calabrese went quiet immediately. Then DeLuca looked back at Elena, and his expression shifted into something that might have been amusement. "You're right about the wine, by the way. It does need more time. Bring me the Brunello, the 2016 if you have it." Elena nodded and walked away on legs that felt steadier than they should have. Behind her, she heard the conversation resume in lower voices. She didn't look back. Looking back would be a mistake. Looking back would show fear, and fear was blood in the water. In the server station, Marco grabbed her arm. "Are you insane? Do you know who that is?" "Someone who doesn't like his wine." "That's Adrian DeLuca. The Adrian DeLuca. His family, Jesus, Elena, his family runs half the construction contracts in the city. He lowered his voice. They're not people you talk back to. I'll keep that in mind. She pulled her arm free and went to get the Brunello. The rest of the service passed in a haze. Elena delivered the wine. DeLuca nodded his approval but said nothing, and managed to avoid table 4 for the rest of the night. Other servers handled their orders, their refills, their check. She focused on her other tables, smiled when appropriate, forgot conversations the moment they ended. But she felt his eyes on her, watching, calculating. At 11:30, the restaurant began to empty. The kitchen started breaking down, dishwashers clattering in their industrial rhythm. Elena finished her closing duties, rolling silverware, refilling salt shakers, trying not to think about the fact that she'd just done the one thing she'd promised herself she'd never do. She'd been seen. Elena. The maitre d', Richard, peered at her elbow. He was 50-something, impeccably dressed, and had worked at La Stella Rosa longer than anyone could remember. Mr. DeLuca would like a word before you leave. Her stomach dropped. I'm off the clock. He's aware. Tell him I have plans. Richard's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes said, you poor, stupid girl. He's waiting in the private dining room. The private dining room was upstairs, a space reserved for parties that valued discretion over ambiance. Elena had only been up there once to help with a wine pairing for someone's 60th birthday. The room was smaller than the main floor, just one large table and a few chairs. But the windows overlooked the street in a way that made you feel like you owned everything below. Adrian DeLuca stood by those windows now, hands in his pockets, watching the late-night traffic. Close the door, he said without turning around. Elena did, but she stayed near it. Exit routes. Always know your exit routes. You lied to me, DeLuca said. About Corleone. You called me a liar already. I got the message. No, you didn't. If you had, you wouldn't have come up here. He turned to face her, and in the dim light of the room, he looked less like a businessman and more like what he actually was, a predator. You would have run, which means either you're stupid or you think you can handle this. Which is it? I just wanted to keep my job. Your job? He laughed, a short, bitter sound. Your job slinging overpriced pasta to men who've killed people for looking at them wrong. That job? It pays the rent. I'm sure it does. He walked toward her, not fast but not slow either, covering the distance with the easy confidence of someone who'd never had to worry about resistance. Let me tell you what I think, Elena Voss. I think you're running from something. I think that accent you work so hard to hide, that perfect dialect you learned from someone who mattered to you, I think all of that is connected to a life you're trying to forget. And I think... He stopped just inside her personal space, close enough that she could smell his cologne, see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. I think you're more dangerous than you look. Elena didn't move, didn't blink. You're wrong. Am I? I'm a waitress, that's all. Then why did you understand me? His voice dropped lower, intimate. I've used that dialect in this restaurant 100 times. Every server in this place has heard me speak it. None of them have ever responded. But you didn't just understand, you corrected me in front of witnesses. Why? Because I'm tired, Elena thought. Because I'm so goddamn tired of being invisible. I made a mistake, she said instead. Yes, you did. DeLuca stepped back, giving her space. But I'm going to give you a chance to make up for it. I don't want... Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. There's a meeting happening in Little Italy, Mulberry Street, the social club near Hester. You know it? She did. Everyone who worked in this world knew it. There will be 3 families there, DeLuca continued. Calabrese's people, the Russos, and a group from Montreal who think they're smarter than they are. I need someone who can listen, really listen, not just to what's said in English, but to what's said when they think no one's paying attention. You want me to spy for you. I want you to use the skills you're trying to hide. In exchange, I'll forget about tonight. Forget that you lied to my face. Forget that you might be a problem I need to solve. The threat hung in the air between them, unspoken but clear. And if I say no? Elena asked. DeLuca smiled. Then I'll start asking questions. About Elena Voss? About where she came from, who she really is, why her social security number has only existed for 3 years. I'll ask those questions very loudly, in places where the wrong people might hear them, and then we'll see how long you stay invisible. Elena's mouth went dry. You're blackmailing me. I'm offering you a job. Temporary, well-paid, and infinitely safer than whatever you're running from. He pulled a business card from his pocket and held it out. Think about it. You have until tomorrow afternoon to decide. She didn't take the card. I already told you, I'm just a waitress. Fine. Then go back to being just a waitress. But understand something first. He leaned in, voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Tu non si solo una camerera, e tutti e due lo sappiamo. You're not just a waitress, and we both know it. He left the card on the table and walked out, his footsteps echoing down the stairs. Elena stood alone in the private dining room, staring at that small rectangle of cardstock like it was a live grenade. Her hands shook, not from fear, exactly, but from the horrible, treacherous rush of recognition. Because DeLuca was right. She wasn't just a waitress. She'd never been just a waitress. And the worst part? A small, buried part of her, the part she'd tried to kill when she fled to New York, was relieved that someone finally saw her. Elena's apartment was a fourth-floor walk-up in Washington Heights, the kind of building where the radiator clanked all winter and the neighbors' arguments bled through thin walls. She'd paid first, last, and security in cash, given a fake reference, and moved in with 2 suitcases and a promise to herself that this was the last time, the last identity, the last run. 3 years, 2 months, 16 days. She dropped her keys on the kitchen counter, scratched laminate that had probably been white once, and kicked off her shoes. Her feet ached, her head ached worse. The business card sat in her pocket like a stone. She pulled it out, studying it under the flickering fluorescent light. Simple. Expensive cardstock, embossed lettering. Just a name, Adrian DeLuca, and a phone number. No company, no title, nothing that would tell a stranger what he actually did for a living. Smart. Elena tossed it on the counter and went to the freezer, pulling out the vodka she kept for nights when sleep wouldn't come easy. She poured 2 fingers into a mismatched glass and downed it in one swallow, feeling the burn settle into her chest. Tu non sei solo una camerera. Damn him. She poured another shot but didn't drink it, just held the glass and stared at her reflection in the dark window. The invisible girl stared back. Neat hair, plain clothes, forgettable face, alive from top to bottom. Her phone buzzed, a text from Marco. You okay? Richard said DeLuca wanted to talk to you. Should I be worried? She typed back, fine, just wanted to compliment the service. The lie came easy, they always did. Another buzz. This time a number she didn't recognize. Tick-tock Elena. Tomorrow at 3. Yes or no? AD. Elena stared at the message, deleted it, blocked the number. Then she picked up the business card, walked to the bathroom, and held it over the toilet. All she had to do was let go. Flush it. Pretend tonight never happened. Show up at La Stella Rossa tomorrow. Apologize to Richard. Keep her head down for a few more years until she'd saved enough to disappear somewhere new. Phoenix, maybe. Or Portland. Somewhere without winters, without memories, without men who spoke her grandmother's language and saw through her careful masks. She could do it. She'd done it before. Elena looked at herself in the medicine cabinet mirror, really looked, the way she avoided doing most days. Brown eyes, sharp cheekbones, a mouth that used to smile more. Her grandmother's face, her mother's coloring, her father's stubborn chin. Signorina di Nunda, her grandmother used to call her. Little Miss Nothing, not as an insult, but as armor. The world doesn't need to see who you are. It only needs to see who you let it see. But hiding only worked if no one looked too close. Adrian DeLuca had looked. Elena dropped the business card in the sink instead of the toilet. She turned on the faucet, watching water pool around it, waiting to see if the ink would run. It didn't. Good cardstock. The expensive kind. She dried it off and tucked it into her wallet. Tomorrow she'd decide. Tonight, she'd drink cheap vodka and pretend the last 3 years hadn't just collapsed with one sentence in a dead language. The next morning came too early and too bright. Elena woke to her alarm with a headache that vodka and poor decisions had earned her. She showered, dressed in jeans and a sweater, her day off, no uniform required, and made coffee that tasted like burnt regret. The business card sat on her counter where she'd left it. She had 8 hours to decide. Instead of deciding, she went for a walk. Washington Heights in October was as close to beautiful as New York got. The trees along Fort Washington Park had started to turn, splashes of red and gold against gray sky. Elena walked without destination, hands in her pockets, trying to remember the last time she'd had a choice that mattered. 3 years ago. Blood on her hands, her father's voice, "Run," echoing in her ears as she'd stumbled into the night with nothing but the clothes on her back and her grandmother's necklace around her throat. She'd run, all the way to New York, to a forger's basement in Queens, to a new name and a new life built on minimum wage and careful anonymity. And it had worked. For 3 years, it had worked. Until last night. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number again, different from last night's. The text was simple. Nice neighborhood. Good coffee shop on 187th. You should try it. AD, Elena's blood went cold. She spun, scanning the street. Morning traffic, bodega owners setting up fruit stands, a woman walking 3 dogs. No one watching, no one obvious. Another text. Relax. I'm not there. But I could be. That's the point. She typed back. This is harassment. This is business. 3 p.m. Yes or no? Elena shoved her phone in her pocket and kept walking, pulse hammering. He was showing her what he could do, where he could reach. How little her carefully constructed invisibility actually meant. The smart thing would be to run. Right now. Today. Pack the essentials, drain her savings, buy a bus ticket to somewhere far and flat. But running required resources she didn't have anymore. The forger who'd made her documents was dead. She'd checked carefully a year ago. Her cash reserves were thin. And DeLuca knew her face now, her real accent, enough details to make running expensive and dangerous. She found herself in Fort Tryon Park, standing at the overlook where you could see the Hudson River stretch north toward mountains she'd never visited. Her grandmother used to say that water was memory, that rivers carried the past downstream whether you wanted them to or not. What would you do? Elena thought, imagining her grandmother's sharp eyes, her sharper tongue. I would survive, the imaginary voice answered. Whatever it takes. At 2:30, Elena was back in her apartment, staring at her phone. At 2:45, she picked it up. At 2:58, she sent the text. Yes. The response came in seconds. Smart girl, Mulberry and Hester, 8 p.m. Don't be late. And Elena? Wear something nice. You're not a waitress tonight. She stared at the message until her vision blurred. Then she opened her closet and looked at the clothes she hadn't worn in 3 years. The ones from before. The ones that belonged to a girl who'd known how to navigate rooms full of dangerous men. How to read power dynamics. How to survive in a world where one wrong word could get you killed. In the back, behind winter coats and forgotten dresses, she found it. A black dress. Simple, but well cut. Expensive in a way that didn't scream. Her mother's taste. Her mother's world. Elena pulled it out and held it up to the light. Tu non si solo una camerera. No, she whispered to her empty apartment. I guess I'm not. At 7:30, she got on the subway heading downtown. At 7:55, she stood on the corner of Mulberry and Hester, wearing a dead woman's dress and a living woman's fear. And at exactly 8 o'clock, Adrian DeLuca's car pulled up to the curb, black, expensive, windows tinted dark enough to hide everything. The back door opened. Get in, DeLuca said from inside. Elena hesitated. This was the moment, the last chance to walk away. But walking away meant going back to invisibility, and invisibility had stopped being armor the moment she'd opened her mouth. She got in the car. The door closed behind her with a sound like a coffin lid. And just like that, Elena Voss, waitress, nobody, invisible girl, ceased to exist. Whatever happened next would belong to someone else entirely. The interior of the car smelled like leather and expensive cologne. Elena settled into the seat, hyper-aware of how the dress felt against her skin. Foreign, like wearing someone else's memory. Adrian DeLuca sat across from her, one leg crossed over the other, studying her with the same intensity he'd shown at the restaurant. You're early, he said. You told me not to be late. Most people interpret that as arriving exactly on time, fashionably. He gestured to the driver without looking away from her. The partition between front and back was already up, soundproofed glass that made the world outside feel very far away. Early suggests eagerness or fear. Maybe I just respect punctuality. Or maybe you wanted the extra time to assess the situation before walking into a room full of wolves. He smiled, but it didn't soften his face. Smart. Are you afraid, Elena? She met his eyes. Should I be? Probably. The car pulled away from the curb, merging into evening traffic. Through the tinted windows, Little Italy blurred past, red, white, and green flags hanging from fire escapes, old men playing cards at sidewalk cafes, tourists taking photos of bakery windows. Let me be clear about what's happening tonight, DeLuca said. This isn't a test. This is work. Real work. With real consequences if you fuck it up. The people in that room have killed for less than a misunderstood word. They're paranoid, they're smart, and they're watching everyone, including you. What exactly do you need me to do? Listen, watch. These families have been negotiating a shipping contract for 6 months. Calabrese wants access to the Montreal routes, the Russos want a percentage of the waterfront construction, and the Canadians want everyone to play nice while they expand south. Simple business. Doesn't sound simple. It's not, because one of them is planning to sabotage the deal. I don't know who yet, but I will by the end of tonight. He leaned forward slightly. They'll speak English when they want to be heard, but they'll speak other languages when they think they're being clever. Italian, French, Quebecois, maybe Sicilian if they're feeling nostalgic or stupid. And you want me to translate. I want you to listen to what they're not saying. The subtext. The insults buried in compliments. The alliances forming in the corners. He pulled out a small device from his jacket, something that looked like a hearing aid but clearly wasn't. You'll wear this. It's a transmitter. Everything you hear, I hear. You'll stand near the bar, play the part of hostess or assistant or whatever they assume you are. Women are invisible in these rooms, which makes you perfect. Elena took the device, turning it over in her palm. You're asking me to risk my life for a business deal. Plus, I'm asking you to use skills you've been hiding to make yourself valuable. And yes, there's risk, but there's also reward. He pulled out an envelope thick with cash. $10,000. Tonight. Cash. No questions, no taxes, no paper trail. She stared at the envelope. $10,000 was 3 months' rent, a new identity if she needed to run, breathing room she hadn't had in years. And after tonight? She asked. Depends on how useful you are. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting right now. DeLuca's expression shifted, something almost human flickering behind the cold calculation. I'm not asking you to trust me, Elena. I'm asking you to be smart. You've been running from something for 3 years. Whatever it is, it's still out there, still looking. The invisibility you've been hiding behind? That's not protection. That's just delay. Eventually, someone finds you. Someone always does. The words hit harder than they should have. Elena looked out the window, watching the city scroll past. You don't know anything about me. I know enough. I know you're Sicilian, but you won't say from where. I know your documents are fake, but good enough to pass casual inspection. I know you speak at least 4 languages fluently, and you've worked in service positions where you learn to read people. That's not a waitress's resume. That's someone who grew up in a very specific kind of life. You're guessing. I'm observing. There's a difference. The car turned down a narrower street, brownstones pressing close on either side. Here's what I'm offering. Work for me, and I'll make sure whatever you're running from stays in the past. I have resources, connections. I can make people disappear, both literally and paperwork-wise. But I need to know you're worth the investment. Elena turned back to him. And if I'm not, then tonight is a very expensive mistake for both of us. He said it lightly, but the threat underneath was clear as glass. The car stopped in front of a 3-story building with no sign, no indication of what happened inside. Just a brown door with a brass handle and a security camera angled down at the entrance. DeLuca checked his watch. We're going in through the back. You'll enter each separately, 5 minutes after me. There's a service entrance on Broome Street. The door will be unlocked. 2nd floor, room on the right. You'll know it when you hear it. And if someone stops me, tell them you're with me. They'll let you pass. He opened his door, pausing halfway out. One more thing. The device records everything, but it only transmits within 50 feet. Don't wander, don't improvise, and don't, under any circumstance, let them know you understand more than English. If they catch you listening to something you shouldn't, this stops being business and becomes something much worse. Understood. Good. He stepped out, then leaned back in. And Elena? You look the part. Remember that. You belong in that room as much as anyone else. Confidence sells the lie. Then he was gone, disappearing into the building like smoke. Elena sat alone in the car, heart hammering. The driver hadn't moved, hadn't acknowledged her presence at all. Professional. Paid to see nothing. She fitted the transmitter into her ear. It was small enough to be invisible, cool against her skin. When she tapped it twice, she heard a faint click. Active. The money sat on the seat beside her. She picked it up, feeling the weight of it. Real. Tangible. Enough to matter. She shoved it in her purse and got out of the car. Broome Street was darker, quieter. The service entrance was exactly where DeLuca said it would be, a metal door tucked between two dumpsters. Elena tried the handle. Unlocked. Inside, a narrow staircase led up. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in sickly yellow. She could hear voices above, muffled, indistinct, male. Her heels clicked on the concrete steps, too loud, but there was nothing to be done about it. Second floor. The door on the right was heavy wood, expensive looking, out of place in the utilitarian hallway. She could hear them clearly now. Laughter, the clink of glasses, someone speaking rapid Italian. Elena smoothed her dress, checked her reflection in a darkened window. The invisible girl looked back, but wearing different armor now. She opened the door. The room was smaller than she'd expected, more intimate. A conference table dominated the center, surrounded by men in expensive suits. Cigar smoke hung in the air despite the no-smoking laws that nobody in this room cared about. Windows overlooked the street, curtains half-drawn. Adrian DeLuca stood near the head of the table, drink in hand, mid-conversation with Vincent Calabrese. He glanced at Elena when she entered, barely a flicker of acknowledgement, then looked away. "Gentlemen," he said, voice cutting through the chatter. "My associate is here. We can begin." 8 pairs of eyes turned to Elena. She felt the weight of their assessment, quick, dismissive, categorizing her as furniture. Good. Furniture was invisible. Associate? This from a man Elena didn't recognize. Older, thick through the middle, with the kind of tan that came from Florida winters. "Since when do you bring dates to business meetings, Adrian?" "Since I needed someone who speaks better French than your lazy Quebecois, Russo," DeLuca gestured to an empty chair near the bar setup. "Elena, please, make yourself comfortable." She moved to the indicated spot, aware of every step, every shift of fabric. The chair gave her a clear view of the table while keeping her peripheral to the action. Perfect position for observation. The men settled back into their conversations. She caught the tail end of something in Italian, Calabrese complaining about shipping schedules, and someone else responding in English about union complications. "Questi stronzi non capiscono un cazzo," muttered one of the younger men to his neighbor. "These assholes don't understand shit." He was speaking to someone Elena pegged as his father, same nose, same aggressive posture. She kept her face neutral, eyes focused on the middle distance, like she was waiting for instruction. DeLuca took his seat at the table. "All right, let's talk roots. The Port Authority is breathing down everyone's necks after last month's incident. We need a cleaner system. Montreal, you said you had a proposal?" A man with silver hair and expensive glasses leaned forward. This was Laurent Beaumont, Elena guessed, the Canadian contingent. "We have contacts in customs. Sympathetic contacts, if you understand me, but they require assurances. Insurance. De l'argent," someone muttered. "Money. Évidemment," Beaumont replied smoothly. Obviously. "But more than that, we need guarantees that New York respects the arrangement. No freelancing, no side deals." "You're talking about the gallows situation," Russo said. "That was an isolated incident." "An incident?" Beaumont's associate, younger, sharper, laughed. "C'était un massacre." It was a massacre. "Watch your mouth," Calabrese said, but there was no real heat in it. Elena listened, cataloging. The gallows situation. She didn't know the details, but clearly it was recent and violent. Beaumont was using it as leverage, pushing for control. The point, DeLuca said, cutting through the rising tension, is that we all benefit from stability. Russo gets his construction contracts clean. Calabrese expands distribution. Montreal gets reliable southern access. Everyone wins. Everyone wins if everyone cooperates, Russo said. But there are whispers, rumors about certain parties making alternative arrangements. The room went quiet. Elena felt the shift, the way predators go still before striking. What rumors? DeLuca's voice was calm, almost bored, but his posture had changed. Tighter, ready. Russo pulled out a cigar, taking his time lighting it. I heard the Castellanos are sniffing around Montreal, offering better terms, fewer middlemen. Casate, Calabrese spat. Bullshit. The Castellanos don't have the infrastructure. They have ambition and friends in interesting places. Russo exhaled smoke. I'm just saying what I heard. Tu stai mentendo, the younger Italian said to his father. You're lying. But he said it in Sicilian. The dialect shifted enough that most of the room wouldn't catch the nuance. His father shot him a look that could cut glass. Stai zitto. Shut up. Elena's pulse kicked up. That exchange, father and son, tension beneath the surface. The son thought his father was lying about the Castellano situation, which meant either Russo was playing both sides or the son was paranoid. She tapped the transmitter twice, a signal DeLuca had told her meant note this. DeLuca's eyes flicked to her for half a second. Received. The Castellanos are old news, he said. Marco Castellano drinks himself stupid in Atlantic City, and his brothers are too busy fighting each other to build alliances. Russo, if you're suggesting they're a threat, you're either misinformed or deliberately wasting our time. I'm suggesting, Russo said slowly, that maybe someone at this table isn't being entirely honest about their intentions. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Beaumont set down his glass very carefully. Vous m'accusez? You're accusing me? I'm accusing whoever's fucking around with my contracts. Your contracts? Calabrese laughed. Since when do you own the waterfront? Since I paid for the privilege. You paid for access, not ownership. There's a difference. The argument escalated, voices overlapping. Elena watched DeLuca, who remained perfectly still, observing like a scientist watching a chemical reaction. Then the younger Russo, the son, stood up. Basta! Enough. He was agitated, sweating despite the cool room. Mio padre sta cercando di fregarvi tutti. My father is trying to screw you all. Siediti, Russo Sr. growled. Sit down. No! The son turned to the table, switching to English with an accent that got thicker when he was emotional. He has deal with Castellanos. Secret deal. I saw the papers. He's cutting you out, taking Montreal routes for himself. Silence. The kind of silence that comes right before gunfire. Russo Sr.'s face went purple. You little... Is this true? DeLuca's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Russo turned to him, mouth working. My son is confused. He doesn't understand the business. I understand you're a liar, the son shot back. I understand you've been playing both sides for months. Elena watched Beaumont's face. He wasn't surprised. He was angry, yes, but not surprised, which meant he'd suspected, maybe even known. Tabernacle, Beaumont muttered. Fuck. Then louder, in English. You waste 6 months of my time? 6 months of negotiations while you make side deals? I made insurance, Russo said, in case this partnership didn't work out. Insurance? Calabrese stood up now too, all pretense of civility gone. You mean betrayal? I mean survival, something you soft New York boys forgot about. DeLuca laughed. Actually laughed. A sound so unexpected that everyone turned to look at him. This is beautiful, he said. Really, beautiful. Here we are trying to build something stable, and Russo proves exactly why this city eats people like him alive. He looked at Russo with something like pity. You think the Castellanos will protect you? They can't even protect themselves. Marco Castellano owes money to half the casinos on the eastern seaboard. His brothers are one bad deal away from civil war. You've bet on a losing horse. Better than betting on you, Russo shot back. Is it? DeLuca's voice went cold. Because from where I'm sitting, you just confessed to breach of contract in front of witnesses. You've lost Montreal's trust, Calabresi's respect, and whatever reputation you had left. So tell me, Russo, what exactly did your insurance buy you? Russo looked around the table. No allies. Even his son had backed away, realizing too late that he'd just torpedoed his father's career. We're done here, Beaumont said, standing. No deal. Not with him, not with anyone who tolerates this kind of disrespect. He looked at DeLuca. You want Montreal roots. You negotiate in good faith, without the garbage. Agreed, Calabresi said. Russo's face went from purple to white. You can't just... We can. DeLuca stood, buttoning his jacket. And we are. You're out. Your territories get redistributed. Your contracts get reassigned. And if you're smart, you'll disappear quietly before people start asking more questions about your creative accounting. You're making a mistake, Russo said, but his voice had lost its edge. The only mistake I'm making is letting you walk out of here instead of carrying you. DeLuca nodded to Elena. We're leaving. She stood, legs surprisingly steady, and followed him toward the door. Behind them, the room erupted into argument again. Russo trying to salvage something, his son silent, the others dividing up territory like wolves over a carcass. In the hallway, DeLuca didn't slow down. He led her down the stairs, out the back entrance, into the alley where the car was already waiting. They got in, the door closed, the car pulled away. Only then did DeLuca speak. What did you hear? The son said his father was trying to screw everyone, that Russo had papers showing a deal with the Castellanos. Elena paused, but Beaumont wasn't surprised. He knew, or suspected, he was waiting for confirmation. Good. What else? The son is an idiot. He just destroyed his father in front of everyone. Either he's genuinely stupid or he was planted to do exactly that. DeLuca smiled. Very good. What else? Elena closed her eyes, replaying the evening. Calabrese deferred to you multiple times. He's not the power player in that room. You are. Beaumont knew it too. The whole meeting was theater. You were never negotiating with Russo. You were exposing him. Bingo! DeLuca pulled the transmitter from her ear, gently, his fingers warm against her skin. You just watched a hostile takeover disguised as a business meeting. Russo's been a problem for 6 months, greedy, sloppy, making deals he couldn't keep. His own son confirming it just saved me a lot of trouble. You knew, Elena said slowly. You knew what he was doing before tonight. I suspected, but suspicion doesn't hold up in our world. Proof does, and public humiliation. He tucked the device back in his pocket. You did well, better than I expected. You used me. I used your skills, there's a difference. He pulled out the envelope again, added another stack of bills to it. 15,000, bonus for exceeding expectations. Elena stared at the money. What happens to Russo? He'll disappear. Maybe Florida, maybe somewhere quieter. His son will probably end up working for someone else, assuming he's smart enough to keep his mouth shut from now on. It's not personal. It's just business. Business. The word tasted wrong in her mouth. DeLuca studied her. You're having second thoughts. I'm having thoughts, period. You manipulated an entire room of people, destroyed a man's career, possibly his life. I removed a cancerous growth before it metastasized. Russo was going to cause a war. Wars are expensive and messy, and everyone loses. This way, only one person loses. That's mathematics, not morality. Easy for you to say. Is it? His voice sharpened. You think I enjoy this? The constant chess game, the paranoia, the knowledge that half the people who smile at me would kill me if they thought they could get away with it. He leaned back, exhaling. I didn't choose this life, Elena. I inherited it. My father built this empire on blood and favors, and when he died, I had 2 choices. Take the throne or abdicate and watch everything collapse. I chose survival, same as you. The comparison stung because it was accurate. What do you want from me? Elena asked. Really? I told you, I want someone I can trust, someone smart enough to see the angles, skilled enough to navigate them, and desperate enough to not ask too many questions. He gestured to the envelope. You need money and protection. I need competence and discretion. We help each other. And when you don't need me anymore, then we part ways professionally. I'm not in the business of creating enemies unnecessarily. The car turned onto her street. Elena recognized the bodega on the corner, the broken streetlight she passed every night. How did you know where I live? She asked quietly. I know everything about you that matters, and some things that don't. He handed her the envelope. Sleep on it. Tomorrow, if you want to continue this arrangement, you'll get a call. If you don't answer, I'll assume you've made your choice and I'll leave you alone. Just like that? Just like that. I'm not a monster, Elena. I'm a businessman with unconventional needs. You're an asset or you're not. Either way, tonight's money is yours. Consider it payment for services rendered. The car stopped outside her building. The driver came around, opened her door. Elena hesitated. What if I run? Then you run. DeLuca's expression was unreadable. But running gets harder every time, and eventually you run out of places to hide. She got out, clutching the envelope. The cool October air felt sharp after the warmth of the car. Elena, DeLuca called through the open door. That dress suits you better than the uniform. Something to think about. Then the door closed and the car pulled away, leaving her standing on the sidewalk with $15,000 and a choice that felt less like freedom and more like inevitability. Upstairs in her apartment, Elena spread the money on her bed. Crisp hundreds, enough to disappear, enough to start over somewhere new. She looked at her reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back was wearing her mother's dress, and her grandmother's stubbornness, and her own exhausted resignation. 3 years of running, 3 years of being invisible, and one night had reminded her what it felt like to be seen. Elena picked up her phone. DeLuca's number was already saved from his earlier text. She didn't call. Not yet. Instead, she pulled out the shoebox from under her bed, the one with her real documents, the ones that said who she'd been before she became Elena Voss. Birth certificate. Passport, expired. A photo of her parents on their wedding day. Her grandmother's necklace, silver and tarnished, and underneath it all, a newspaper clipping, 3 years old, the headline in Italian, "Prominent family found dead in suspected arson." She didn't need to read it. She'd memorized every word. Elena Santoro. That's who she'd been. Daughter of Antonio and Maria Santoro. Granddaughter of Lucia Messina. Part of a family tree that stretched back generations in the hills outside Taormina. A family that had ended in fire and screaming, and her father's last words, "Run. Don't look back. Run." She'd run, all the way to America, all the way into invisibility. But invisibility was just another kind of cage. Elena put the clipping back in the box, tucked it away. She hung the dress in her closet, showered, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling. At 3 in the morning, she made her decision. At 9 the next morning, her phone rang. Unknown number, she answered. "Yes." "Smart girl," Adrian DeLuca said. "I'll send a car at noon. We have work to do." He hung up before she could respond. Elena set the phone down and looked around her tiny apartment. The peeling paint, the secondhand furniture, the life she'd built from nothing. It had been enough when survival was the only goal. But maybe, just maybe, she wanted more than survival now. She got dressed in clothes that didn't scream waitress, did her makeup with a steadier hand, and waited for the car. When it arrived, she didn't hesitate. She got in, and the door closed behind her like a choice she couldn't take back. And somewhere in the back of her mind, her grandmother's voice whispered, "Signorina di Nunda no more. Now you're something else, something dangerous, something necessary, something alive." The car took her to a building in Midtown she'd never noticed before. The kind of place that looked like generic office space but had security cameras on every corner and men in expensive suits who moved like soldiers. DeLuca's headquarters, she realized. Not a restaurant, not a social club. The real thing. "4th floor," the driver said, the first words he'd spoken to her in 2 days. Elena rode the elevator alone, watching the numbers climb. Her reflection in the polished steel doors showed someone she barely recognized. Put together, purposeful, nothing like the girl who'd served pasta and kept her head down. The doors opened into a reception area that could have belonged to any consulting firm, all glass and leather and abstract art that probably cost more than her yearly salary. A woman sat behind the desk, 60-something, hair in a silver bob, reading glasses on a chain. She looked up when Elena stepped out. Miss Voss? Mister? DeLuca is expecting you. Conference room B down the hall on your right. Thank you. The woman smiled, but her eyes did the same calculation everyone's eyes did in this world. Threat assessment, value judgment, dismissal. Coffee's fresh if you want it. He'll be another few minutes. Conference call running long. Elena found the room. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the street 40 feet below. The conference table was glass, the chairs modern and uncomfortable looking. She didn't sit. Instead, she stood by the windows, watching traffic crawl through Manhattan's perpetual gridlock, admiring the view or planning your escape route. She turned. DeLuca stood in the doorway, phone in one hand, coffee in the other. He looked tired, the kind of tired that came from too many late nights and too much responsibility. His tie was loosened, jacket abandoned somewhere. Both, Elena said. Honest. I like that. He set his phone down, face down on the table. How'd you sleep? I didn't. Yeah, me neither. He gestured to a folder on the table. That's yours. New identity, complete documentation. Birth certificate, social security card, passport. Elena Voss is now a legal citizen with a paper trail going back 26 years. College degree from NYU, work history in hospitality management. Everything checks out if anyone looks. Elena picked up the folder, flipping through documents that looked more legitimate than the forgeries she'd bought in Queens. Why? Because if you're working for me, you need to be bulletproof. The FBI sniffs around everyone in my orbit. Better to have documentation that can survive scrutiny. He paused. Also because I need you to understand something. I invest in my people. You're useful. I protect you. You're loyal. I make sure you have what you need. And if I'm not, then we have a problem. He said it matter-of-factly, like discussing weather. But I don't think we will. You're too smart to bite the hand that's feeding you. Elena set the folder down. What's the job? Direct? Good. DeLuca pulled out a chair, finally sitting. There's a negotiation happening tomorrow night, bigger than Russo's disaster. 3 families are trying to consolidate shipping routes through New Jersey, Calabrese, the Morettis from Philadelphia, and a group from Boston called the Torinos. The Torinos are new money, aggressive, trying to prove themselves. They're also dangerous because they don't know the rules yet. And you need me to listen again. I need you to do more than listen. I need you to participate. That stopped her. What do you mean participate? The Torino's second in command is a woman, Sophia Torino, the boss's daughter. She's 30, educated, speaks 5 languages, and doesn't trust men as far as she can throw them. Her father's trying to groom her for leadership, which means she's sitting at the table. She won't talk to me or Calabrese or any of the usual players, but she might talk to you. You want me to befriend her. I want you to assess her. Figure out if the Torinos are serious about negotiating or if they're planning something stupid. Sophia's the key. She's smart enough to see through bullshit, which means if she's on board, the deal's legitimate. If she's not, then we have a problem. Exactly. DeLuca leaned back, studying her. You'll be introduced as my business consultant. Legitimate role, legitimate presence. No one will question it. Except Sophia Torino, who'll know exactly what I'm doing. Probably. But that's fine. Half of this game is everyone knowing everyone else is playing and proceeding anyway. She'll respect competence more than she'll trust innocence. Elena walked to the windows again, processing. A month ago, she'd been invisible. Now she was being asked to sit at a table with people who killed for a living and pretend she belonged. What if I mess up? She asked quietly. Then we both have a bad night. DeLuca's voice softened slightly. But I don't think you will. You've been navigating dangerous rooms your whole life, haven't you? This is just a different kind of danger. She turned to face him. How much do you actually know about me? Enough to know Elena Voss isn't your real name. Enough to know you're from money, or at least from a family that understood power. Enough to know something bad happened 3 years ago, and you ran. He stood, crossing to where she stood. I don't need your whole story, Elena. I just need to know you can handle this. And if I can't, then tell me now and we end this arrangement professionally. No hard feelings, no consequences. You walk away with your new identity and the money, and we never speak again. He meant it. She could see it in his face. But if you say yes, and then fail, that's different. That costs us both. Elena looked down at the street below. Tiny people rushing to tiny jobs, living tiny lives, safe lives, invisible lives. She'd tried that. For 3 years she'd tried that. I can handle it, she said. You sure? No, but I'll do it anyway. DeLuca smiled. A real one this time. That's the most honest answer anyone's given me in years. The next 24 hours blurred together in a crash course on people she'd never met and politics she'd never cared about. DeLuca's assistant, the silver-haired woman whose name was Margaret, and who'd apparently worked for his father before him, provided files on all the major players. Sofia Torino's dossier was thickest. Graduate degree from Columbia. Fluent in English, Italian, French, Mandarin, and Portuguese. 3 years working in international finance before returning to Boston to join the family business. Engaged once, broken off for reasons the file didn't specify. No children. No obvious weaknesses. She's a problem, Margaret said, perched on the edge of Elena's temporary desk in an empty office that had become her staging area. Smart women in this business usually are. They have to be twice as ruthless to get half the respect. Sounds familiar, Elena muttered, still reading. I imagine it does. Margaret's tone was dry. Word of advice? Don't try to out-tough her. She'll eat you alive. Be competent, be direct, and for the love of everything, don't apologize for taking up space. Women who apologize in these rooms die. Elena looked up. Are you speaking from experience? 30 years of it. I've buried 3 bosses and worked for 2 generations of DeLucas. You learn things. Margaret stood, smoothing her skirt. Adrian's father would have never let a woman sit at that table. Adrian's different. He cares about results, not gender. That's rare. Don't waste it. After Margaret left, Elena kept reading. The Torinos were Boston Irish originally, muscle that had worked their way up through dock unions and protection rackets. The current boss, James Torino, was second generation, trying to legitimize through real estate and shipping. His daughter was his legacy play, proof that the family could evolve. But the file included notes, handwritten in DeLuca's angular script. Sofia pushing expansion too fast. Father losing control? Possible internal conflict. Elena memorized faces, names, relationships. By the time her head hit the pillow that night in a hotel room DeLuca had arranged, safer than your apartment until this is done. She dreamed in org charts and power structures. The meeting was set for 7 p.m. in a private room at a steakhouse in Newark. Neutral territory, expensive enough to signal respect, but not so flashy as to suggest weakness. Elena dressed carefully. Navy suit, minimal jewelry, heels that added height without screaming. She looked like someone who belonged in a boardroom. That was the point. DeLuca's car picked her up at 6. He was already inside, reviewing notes on his phone. Ready? He asked without looking up. As I'll ever be. You'll be fine. Remember, Sofia's there to prove something to her father. That makes her vulnerable. Use it. Use it how? Respect her competence. Acknowledge her position. Don't treat her like the boss's daughter. Treat her like the boss in waiting. He finally looked at her. She'll respond to that. They arrived early. The steakhouse manager, clearly paid well to ask no questions, led them to a private room in the back. Round table, 6 chairs, bar in the corner. Windows overlooked a parking lot. Not romantic, but functional. Calabrese arrived next, greeting DeLuca with the casual familiarity of old allies. He nodded to Elena. Miss Voss, good to see you again. Mr. Calabrese, Adrian tells me you're consulting on international logistics. Smart. We need people who understand the global picture. It was a script, she realized. Everyone playing their part. The Morettis came in together, father and son, both built like retired boxers. They took their seats with minimal conversation. Professionals. And then the Torinos arrived. James Torino was 60, gray-haired, with a handshake that crushed knuckles and eyes that missed nothing. He wore an expensive watch and a cheap haircut, the kind of contradiction that said old money habits died hard. But it was Sofia who made Elena's breath catch. She was smaller than Elena expected, maybe 5'5" in heels, with dark hair cut sharply at her shoulders, and a face that could have been pretty if it wasn't so carefully controlled. She wore black, slacks, blazer, silk shirt, and carried herself with the exhausted authority of someone who'd had to fight for every inch of respect. Their eyes met across the room. Sophia's gaze was clinical, assessing. Elena didn't look away. My daughter, James said, hand on Sophia's shoulder. Sophia handles our international operations. Operations, Sophia corrected quietly. Plural. I handle most of the actual business while the old guard plays cards and reminisces. James laughed, but it sounded forced. She's ambitious, takes after her mother. I take after you, Sophia said. I'm just better at it. The room went quiet. DeLuca smiled slightly, but said nothing. They sat. Elena took the chair between DeLuca and Calabrese, positioning herself as support rather than principal. Sophia sat across from her next to her father. All right, James began. Let's talk about New Jersey. The Port Authority contracts are up for bid in 6 months. We want in. So does everyone, Calabrese said. What makes you special? We have the infrastructure. Warehouses, distribution networks, legitimate fronts. Everything you need to move product without attracting attention. James pulled out a folder. Numbers don't lie. The conversation devolved into specifics. Percentages, territories, who controlled what. Elena listened, but mostly she watched Sophia, who barely spoke but took notes in a leather journal with gold-edged pages. After 20 minutes of negotiation that was going nowhere, Sophia set down her pen. Can I say something? Her father frowned. Sophia, everyone here is dancing around the real issue. So let me be direct. She looked at DeLuca. You don't trust us. You think we're too aggressive, too new. You're worried we'll destabilize your carefully balanced ecosystem. DeLuca didn't deny it. And you're right to worry, Sophia continued. Because frankly, your ecosystem is fragile. You've been playing the same game with the same players for so long that you've forgotten what competition looks like. We're not asking for permission. We're offering partnership. But if you say no, we'll proceed anyway, just without the courtesy of cooperation. Is that a threat? Calabrese asked. It's a business reality. Sophia's voice didn't rise. The shipping industry is evolving. Technology, oversight, international regulations. The old ways don't work anymore. You need people who understand the new landscape. That's us. You mean you, DeLuca said quietly. Yes, I mean me. She met his eyes. My father built this family through muscle and will. I'm building it through strategy and adaptation. Different tools, same goal. Elena found herself impressed despite the situation. Sophia wasn't posturing, she was stating facts. What do you think, Miss Voss? Sophia said suddenly, turning to her. You've been quiet. You must have opinions. Every eye in the room turned to Elena. DeLuca's expression didn't change, but she felt the weight of his attention. Elena chose her words carefully. I think Ms. Torino is right about evolution. Industries change. The question isn't whether to adapt, but how to do it without destroying existing structures that work. Diplomatic, Sophia said. But what do you really think? I think aggressive expansion without local buy-in usually ends in war. Expensive, messy wars that everyone loses. Elena paused. But I also think insularity kills organizations. You need new blood to survive. The trick is integration, not invasion. Sophia tilted her head, reassessing. You speak Italian? The question came out of nowhere. Elena felt DeLuca tense beside her. Some, Elena said carefully. Quanto? How much? Abbastanza per cavarmela. Enough to get by. Siciliano? Elena's pulse kicked up. This was a test. My grandmother spoke it. I picked up some. Interesting. Sophia's eyes narrowed. Most consultants I know don't learn Sicilian from their grandmothers. They learn it from people who need to have private conversations in crowded rooms. The room had gone very quiet. My grandmother believed in preserving heritage, Elena said evenly. Even the inconvenient parts. Sophia smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. I like you. You're smarter than you're pretending to be. Same to you, Elena said before she could stop herself. DeLuca's hand moved slightly on the table. A warning or encouragement, she couldn't tell. But Sophia laughed, a real sound. See? This is what I'm talking about. Finally someone in this room with a spine. She looked at her father. I like her. Can we steal her? She's not for sale, DeLuca said mildly. Everyone's for sale. It's just a question of price. Sophia turned back to Elena. What would it take to get you to work for us instead? A lobotomy, Elena said. I don't switch horses mid-race. Loyalty. Also refreshing. Sophia closed her journal. All right, here's my proposal. We partner on the New Jersey contracts. 50-50 split on revenue. We provide the infrastructure. You provide the local relationships. We operate transparently, share intelligence, and build something that lasts longer than whoever's running things when we're dead. And if there's conflict, Calabrese asked, then we mediate like adults instead of shooting each other like children. James looked uncomfortable with his daughter's directness, but he didn't contradict her. I need to discuss this with my people, DeLuca said. Of course. Take 48 hours. After that, the offer expires and we proceed independently. Sophia stood, signaling the meeting was over. Gentlemen, Miss Voss, pleasure doing business with you. She walked out, her father trailing behind after a round of handshakes. When they were alone, Calabrese let out a breath. She's going to be a problem. She already is, DeLuca said, but maybe the useful kind. He looked at Elena. Walk with me. They left through a side exit into the parking lot. The night was cold, November creeping in with frost and early darkness. DeLuca didn't speak until they were away from the building. You impressed her, he said finally. I insulted her back. That's not the same thing. In this world it is. She was testing you, seeing if you'd fold. You didn't. He stopped by his car. What did you think of her? I think she's everything her file said and more. Smart, driven, impatient. She wants her father's empire, but she wants to build it her way. And I think there's tension there, between what she wants and what her father's willing to give. That makes her unpredictable. DeLuca nodded slowly. I need you to get closer to her. What? You heard me. Sophia responds to you. She doesn't respond to anyone else in that room. I need to know what she's really planning, whether this partnership offer is legitimate or a smokescreen for something else. You want me to befriend her and spy on her. I want you to build rapport and gather intelligence. Spy is such an ugly word. Elena laughed, a harsh sound. You're asking me to manipulate someone who's probably the most genuine person in that room. I'm asking you to do your job, which, in case you forgot, is helping me navigate situations exactly like this. His voice hardened. We're not friends, Elena. We're business associates. I need information. You're positioned to get it. That's the arrangement. And if I say no, then our arrangement ends and you're on your own. With a new identity, sure, but also with knowledge about my operations that makes you a liability. He let that hang in the air. I don't want it to come to that, but I need to know I can count on you. Elena felt cold that had nothing to do with November. You're threatening me. I'm clarifying expectations. There's a difference. She wanted to walk away. Get in a cab, disappear, start over somewhere else. But she'd already made that choice when she got in his car the first time. Everything since had been momentum. Fine, she said. I'll get close to Sophia, but I need something from you. What? Protection. Real protection. If this goes wrong, if the Torinos figure out what I'm doing, I need to know you'll actually cover me. You have my word. Your word means shit in this world, and we both know it. I want it in writing, a contract, my safety in exchange for my services. DeLuca stared at her for a long moment. Then he smiled. You really are smarter than you pretend to be. I learn fast. Do we have a deal? We have a deal. Margaret will draw up the paperwork tomorrow. He opened his car door. Get some sleep. You're meeting Sophia for lunch on Thursday. I'll send you the details. How do you know she'll agree to lunch? Because she's already texted asking for your number. Apparently, she wants to discuss female leadership in male-dominated industries. He got in the car. Play it right, and this could be very profitable for both of us. The car pulled away, leaving Elena standing in a parking lot in Newark with the sick feeling that she'd just agreed to something she'd regret. Thursday came too fast. The restaurant was Sophia's choice, an Italian place in the West Village, small and expensive. The kind of spot where everyone knew everyone and strangers were noticed. Elena arrived early, took a table near the back and ordered water. Sophia walked in 15 minutes late, unapologetic. Traffic was hell. Have you ordered? Just water. Good. I hate people who order before I arrive. Suggest they don't actually want to be here. Sophia sat, flagged down a waiter. Bottle of Sangiovese, the good one, and we'll split the burrata to start. The waiter nodded and disappeared. So, Sophia said, leaning back, tell me about yourself. And please don't give me the consultant bullshit. I can read a LinkedIn profile. Elena had prepared for this. What do you want to know? Why you're really working for Adrian DeLuca. He's not known for hiring women in visible positions. So either you're exceptional or you're something else. Which is it? Can it be both? It could, but usually it's not. Sophia's eyes were sharp. I'm going to be direct because I don't have time for games. I think Adrian put you at that table specifically to get close to me. I think you speak more languages than you admitted, and I think you're someone running from something. Elena's stomach dropped, but she kept her face neutral. That's a lot of assumptions. They're not assumptions, they're observations. The wine arrived. Sophia tasted it, nodded approval. I do the same thing you do, Elena. I watch people. I listen to what they don't say. And you're screaming secrets. If you think I'm a plant, why invite me to lunch? Because plants can be useful if you know what they are, and because... Sophia paused, something almost human crossing her face. Because it's rare to meet another woman in this business who isn't either a victim or a viper. You seem like you might be something in between. I'm curious. The honesty was unexpected. Elena found herself responding to it. I'm trying to survive, same as everyone. Surviving by working for Adrian DeLuca. That's an interesting choice. He offered me something I needed. Safety? Visibility. Sophia raised her glass. Now that's honest. I respect that. She drank, then set the glass down. Let me tell you something about this world, Elena. Men like Adrian, like my father, like Calabrese, they think they run things. They think the muscle and the violence and the loud voices mean power. But real power? Real power is knowing what people want before they know it themselves. It's being 3 moves ahead. It's making people think they chose something when really you chose it for them. Sounds exhausting. It is. But it's also the only way to survive as a woman in this business. We can't outmuscle them. We have to outthink them. Sophia leaned forward. So here's what I think. I think you're smart enough to know you're caught between Adrian's ambition and my family's expansion. I think you're trying to play both sides without getting killed. And I think you're realizing that's nearly impossible. Elena's throat was dry. What do you want from me? Information. Same as Adrian wants from you. Sophia smiled. See, we're not so different. He wants to know my plans. I want to know his. You're the woman in the middle with access to both. That makes you very valuable. Or very dead. Depends on how you play it. You're asking me to double-cross him. I'm asking you to be smart about your own survival. Adrian DeLuca is a shark. He'll use you until you're no longer useful, then cut you loose. My family? We take care of our own. You work with me, really work with me, and I'll make sure you have more than just safety. I'll give you actual power. The burrata arrived. Neither of them touched it. Elena's mind raced. This was exactly what DeLuca had warned her about, getting caught in the crossfire. But Sophia's offer was tempting. Real tempting. I need time to think, Elena said. No, you don't. You need to make a choice right now. Because if you walk out of here without choosing, we both know you're going straight back to Adrian, and then I'll know exactly what you are. Sophia's voice didn't rise, but there was steel underneath. So choose. Work with me or work against me. But don't insult my intelligence by pretending you're neutral. Elena looked at this woman across the table, sharp, driven, offering alliance with one hand and threat with the other. And she realized Sophia was right. There was no middle ground here. There never had been. I'll think about it, Elena said, standing. But not here. Not now. Sophia didn't try to stop her. You have 24 hours. After that, I assume you made your choice. Elena walked out of the restaurant into cold November air, heart pounding. Her phone buzzed immediately. DeLuca. How'd it go? She stared at the message, then at the restaurant behind her where Sophia probably sat finishing the wine. 2 masters, 2 offers, 2 ways to die if she chose wrong. Elena shoved her phone in her pocket and started walking, with no destination and no answer, just the sick certainty that she was in deeper than she'd ever intended to be. And the worst part? She still didn't know which side she was on. Maybe that was the point. Maybe in this world, picking sides was just another way of losing. She kept walking until the restaurant was blocks behind her and the city swallowed her whole. Elena walked for an hour before she realized she'd been circling the same 6 blocks in the West Village, her mind too fractured to navigate properly. Her phone kept buzzing, DeLuca wanting updates, Margaret asking about tomorrow's schedule, a text from an unknown number that just said tick-tock that could only be Sophia. She silenced it all and ducked into a coffee shop, ordered something she didn't want, and sat in the back corner trying to figure out how she'd let herself become the rope in a tug-of-war between 2 people who'd snap her in half without blinking. The smart play was obvious. Tell DeLuca everything. Let him handle Sophia, collect her money, and disappear before the whole thing exploded. Clean, simple, safe. But Sophia's words kept echoing. Real power is being 3 moves ahead, making people think they chose something when really, you chose it for them. Elena had spent 3 years being powerless, reactive, running from shadows and living small. Maybe that was the real trap, thinking survival meant staying invisible when what it actually meant was learning to see the whole board. Her phone rang, not a text this time. DeLuca calling directly. She answered, "I'm fine, just needed air." "Where are you?" His voice was tight. "Coffee shop, village." "Why?" "Because Sophia Torino just called her father. And her father just called Calabrese. And Calabrese just called me asking what the hell I'm playing at, sending a spy to lunch with the Torino princess." DeLuca's control was slipping. She could hear it. "What did you tell her?" "Nothing. She told me things. About you, about her family, about how I'm caught in the middle of something I don't understand." "Did you agree to work with her?" "No." "Did you refuse?" Elena paused too long. DeLuca swore, a string of Italian that would have made her grandmother blush. "She made you an offer," he said flatly, "and you didn't say no. I didn't say yes either. In this world, not saying no is the same as saying maybe, and maybe gets people killed." She heard him moving, a door closing. "Where exactly are you? I'm sending a car. I don't need—" "It wasn't a request. You're in danger and you're too inexperienced to know it." Sophia reads hesitation as weakness and weakness as opportunity. If she thinks for 1 second that you're considering her offer, she'll move on you. "Move on me how?" "How do you think? You have access to my operations, my schedule, my plans. You're either an asset or a liability. There's no neutral." His voice dropped. "Elena, I need you to trust me right now. Tell me where you are and wait for the car. We'll figure this out, but not over the phone and not while you're exposed." Something in his tone, not quite fear but close to it, made her listen. She gave him the address. 10 minutes. Don't move. And Elena, if anyone approaches you before my driver gets there, anyone at all, you run. Understand? You're scaring me. Good. You should be scared. This just stopped being a game. He hung up. Elena stared at her cooling coffee, at the other customers typing on laptops and reading newspapers, living normal lives in a normal city. How had she gotten here? 1 sentence in Sicilian. That's all it took to unravel 3 years of careful construction. The car arrived in 8 minutes. Same driver, different urgency. He didn't speak, just opened the door and waited. Elena got in. They didn't go to DeLuca's office. Instead, the car headed north, out of Manhattan, across the bridge, into the Bronx. Industrial buildings gave way to residential neighborhoods, then to a street of warehouses that looked abandoned but probably weren't. The car stopped at one with no signage, just a roll-up door and a regular entrance beside it. The driver got out, opened her door. "Inside, 2nd floor." Elena climbed stairs that smelled like motor oil and old concrete. The 2nd floor was one big open space, exposed brick, high ceilings, minimal furniture. And DeLuca, standing by tall windows that overlooked the street, phone pressed to his ear. He ended the call when he saw her. "You're okay?" "I'm confused and pissed. What the hell is going on?" "What's going on is that Sophia Torino is smarter than I gave her credit for, and more dangerous." He gestured to a worn couch. "Sit. We need to talk." Elena stayed standing. "Talk about what? About how you sent me into a meeting with incomplete information? About how you're using me as bait without telling me what I'm fishing for? About how Sophia's family has been planning a hostile takeover of my operations for 6 months, and that lunch was her way of recruiting you to help them do it." DeLuca's words came fast, clipped. The partnership offer? Bullshit. The 50-50 split? Smokescreen. They want my roots, my contacts, my entire network. And they figured the fastest way to get it was to flip someone on the inside. You knew this before you sent me to lunch with her. I suspected. Now I know. He pulled out his phone, showed her a photo. This was taken an hour ago, outside that restaurant. The image showed Sofia on the sidewalk, talking to a man Elena didn't recognize. Older, heavyset, wearing a jacket that screamed federal agent. That's Detective Morrison, NYPD Organized Crime Unit. He's been investigating my family for 3 years. And Sofia just had a very cozy conversation with him right after meeting with you. DeLuca's jaw was tight. So either she's working with the cops or she's setting something up. Either way, you're in the middle of it. Elena felt cold. You think she's going to claim I'm cooperating with law enforcement? I think she's building a narrative. One where you're either working with her to take me down or you're working with the cops to take us both down. It's brilliant, actually. Puts you in an impossible position and makes me paranoid about everyone around me. He pocketed his phone. Which is why we're here instead of my office. I don't know who else might be compromised. This is insane. This is strategy. Welcome to the deep end. He moved closer. I need to know right now, Elena, everything Sofia said to you, word for word. Don't leave anything out. So Elena told him. The whole conversation, including Sofia's offer, her assessment of DeLuca as a shark, her promise of real power versus just safety. DeLuca listened without interrupting, face unreadable. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. She's good, he finally said. Better than her father. She knew exactly what buttons to push. What do we do? We? He almost smiled. You're still saying we. That's something. You said we're business associates, so yeah, we. What's the play? DeLuca walked to the windows, thinking. The negotiation is tomorrow night. Calabresi's restaurant in Little Italy, private room upstairs. All the major players will be there. Moretti's, Torino's, my people. It's supposed to finalize the New Jersey deal. But it won't. No, it won't. Because Sofia's going to use it to make a move. I just don't know what kind yet. He turned back to her. I need you there, at that table, listening to everything. After what just happened, she'll know I chose you. That's what I'm counting on. Let her think she lost you. Let her think you're loyal to me. She'll get sloppy, say something she shouldn't, tip her hand. His eyes were hard. Or she'll try to eliminate you as a threat. Either way, we learned something. You want to use me as bait, again. I want to use you as an asset. There's a difference. Not from where I'm standing. Elena's anger was rising now. 3 years of suppressed frustration finding a target. You've been manipulating me from the start. The job at the restaurant, the transmitter, the lunch with Sofia, none of it was about me being useful. It was all about you positioning pieces on a board. And I'm too stupid to see it until I'm already trapped. You're not trapped. Really? Then let me walk out that door right now. Let me take my fake identity and my blood money and disappear. Can you do that? DeLuca's silence was answer enough. That's what I thought. Elena grabbed her purse. I'm done. Find another pawn. She made it 3 steps before he spoke. Your real name is Elena Santoro. Your father was Antonio Santoro. Your mother, Maria Ne Messina. They died 3 years ago in a fire that burned your family home in New Jersey to the ground. Arson, officially unsolved. You survived because you weren't there. You were at Columbia, taking a night class. His voice was quiet, factual. You ran because you knew it wasn't random, because your family had enemies, because you were next. Elena stopped walking. The Voss identity cost you $12,000 from a forger named Chen who worked out of Flushing. You've been living below your education, below your capabilities, waiting tables and cleaning houses because you thought invisible meant safe. He paused. How am I doing so far? She turned slowly. How long have you known? Since the night at the restaurant. I ran your prints from the wine glass you touched. Real identity came back in 48 hours. He spread his hands. I know who you are, Elena. I know what you lost. And I know you're still trying to figure out who killed your family and why. The room tilted. Elena sat down hard on the couch, legs giving out. The fire wasn't random. DeLuca continued, softer now. Your father owed money to the wrong people. Not much. Maybe 50,000. But he refused to pay on principle. Said the debt was fabricated, that he was being squeezed, so they made an example. Who? That's the question, isn't it? He sat across from her. I've had people looking into it, discreetly. The trail goes cold in Philadelphia, which is interesting because that's Moretti territory. But the Morettis claim they had nothing to do with it. And I believe them because your father was nobody important enough to kill, which means someone wanted it to look like mob business when it wasn't. Elena's hands were shaking. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know, and because I need you to understand something. He leaned forward. I'm not the monster you think I am. I'm not using you because I enjoy it. I'm using you because you're smart and capable and you have skills I need. But I'm also trying to protect you. Because the same people who killed your family, they're still out there. And if they ever connect Elena Voss to Elena Santoro, you're dead. Unless I'm useful to you. Unless you're under my protection. Which you are, as long as you're working with me. His expression was almost kind. I know you don't want to be here. I know you'd rather disappear and never look back. But that's not an option anymore. You're visible now. You've been seen. The only question is whether you're going to use that visibility to survive or whether it's going to get you killed. Elena wanted to scream, wanted to cry, wanted to run until her legs gave out. Instead, she sat very still and made herself breathe. Tomorrow night, she finally said. The negotiation. What do you need me to do? Listen, watch, and trust me when I say I'll keep you safe. Your word means shit. I know, you've said that already. He stood, pulled something from his pocket. A gun, small and matte black. So here's something better than my word. You know how to use one of these? My father taught me. Before. Good. Take it. If something goes wrong tomorrow, if anyone threatens you, use it. Don't hesitate, don't negotiate, just shoot. He set it on the table between them. That's my promise, not words. Action. You're armed, you're informed, and you're choosing to stay. Nobody's forcing you. Elena looked at the gun, picked it up. It felt heavier than she remembered. One more thing, DeLuca said. After tomorrow, win or lose, I'll tell you everything I know about your family's fire. Names, connections, theories. You'll have enough to decide what to do with it. That's my other promise. Why would you do that? Because everyone deserves to know why their life got destroyed. And because maybe, once you know, you'll understand why I do what I do. He headed for the stairs. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be complicated. He left her alone with the gun and the truth and the horrible understanding that she'd stopped running the moment she'd answered him in Sicilian. Now she was just choosing which direction to move. The next day crawled past in slow motion. Margaret brought her breakfast, coffee and pastries she didn't eat. The contract DeLuca had promised appeared, dense with legal language but clear enough in intent. Her safety in exchange for her services, binding on both parties. She signed it, wondering if it would matter if everything went wrong. At 5 p.m., Margaret returned with a dress. Dark green, elegant, expensive. From Adrian, Margaret said. He said you'd understand. Elena understood. This wasn't the invisible waitress uniform. This was armor for a different kind of battle. She showered, dressed, did her makeup with steady hands. The gun fit in her purse, concealed but accessible. When she looked in the mirror, the woman staring back looked like someone who belonged at that table. Maybe that was the most dangerous lie of all. The car picked her up at 6:30. DeLuca was already inside, wearing a dark suit and an expression that gave nothing away. Ready? He asked. No, but I'm here anyway. That's all that matters. The restaurant was the same one where she'd first confronted him weeks ago. Full circle, she thought, except now she knew what she was walking into. The private room upstairs was already filling when they arrived. Calabrese and his people, the Morettis, 3 men Elena didn't recognize who must be from other families, and the Torinos, James looking tired, Sophia looking like a knife waiting to cut. Their eyes met across the room. Sophia's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her gaze. Recognition, challenge. Elena took her seat next to DeLuca, the gun pressed against her ribs, a reminder. Gentlemen, James Torino began, and ladies, thank you for coming. Tonight we finalize the New Jersey partnership and begin a new chapter of cooperation. Assuming everyone's on the same page, Calabrese added. Of course, James gestured to his daughter. Sophia's prepared the final terms, everything we discussed, in writing. Sophia stood distributing folders. When she got to Elena, she paused. Miss Voss, still here, I see. Oh, still here, Elena agreed. Loyalty. How quaint. Sophia handed her a folder. I hope it's worth it. The documents outlined everything. Territory splits, revenue percentages, protocols for dispute resolution. It looked legitimate, professional. Elena started reading. That's when she noticed it. Buried in paragraph 17, subsection C, a clause about liability transfer in case of law enforcement intervention. It was written in legal jargon, but the meaning was clear. If anyone at the table got arrested, they'd automatically implicate specific other parties as co-conspirators. Elena's blood ran cold. She tapped DeLuca's arm, pointed to the clause. His face went hard. He read it, then looked up at Sophia. Interesting addition, he said quietly. Standard protection, Sophia replied. We all share risk. We all share consequences. Or you've preloaded a poison pill. If the cops move on you, we all go down together. The room went silent. James frowned. Sophia, what is he talking about? Nothing, Dad. It's standard. It's a setup. DeLuca stood. This whole negotiation has been a setup. You never intended to partner. You intended to build a legal trap so that when the investigation you've been feeding information to finally moves, you can take down everyone at this table while cutting yourself a deal. But that's ridiculous, Sophia said, but her voice had lost its confidence. Is it? Then explain your conversation yesterday with Detective Morrison, outside a restaurant in the West Village right after meeting with my associate. DeLuca pulled out his phone, showed the photo. Want to tell your father what you were discussing? James Torino stood slowly. Sophia, what is this? It's nothing. He's lying. I'm not lying. I'm stating facts. DeLuca's voice was ice. Your daughter has been running a parallel investigation, feeding information to the cops while pretending to negotiate with us. The goal was to implicate everyone here, then flip on us to avoid prosecution herself. Smart play. Would have worked too if she hadn't underestimated my capacity for paranoia. Sophia's mask cracked. Just for a second, but enough. You can't prove any of that. Can I? DeLuca gestured to Elena. Miss Voss, would you mind reading paragraph 17 aloud so everyone understands what they'd be signing? Elena did, her voice steady. As she read, the other men's faces darkened. This is conspiracy to entrap, Calabrese said. You bring us here to sign documents that make us legally liable for each other's crimes? It's mutual protection, Sophia insisted. It's a fucking wire. One of the Morettis stood. Are you wearing a wire right now? Don't be absurd. But James Torino moved faster than Elena expected for a man his age. He grabbed his daughter's arm, spun her around, and yanked at her collar. The small recording device fell to the floor with a clatter that sounded like a gunshot. The room exploded. Men were shouting, chairs scraping, hands moving to concealed weapons. James Torino looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 seconds. You stupid girl, he whispered. What have you done? Sophia jerked away from him. I've done what you were too weak to do. This whole system is dying. The old ways, the handshake deals, the honor among thieves, it's all bullshit. The only way to survive is to evolve or burn it all down and start over. By betraying your own family? James's voice broke. By saving it. Sophia's eyes were wild now. You think these men respect us? They tolerate us because they have to, but the second they can cut us out, they will. I was trying to control the inevitable. By sending us all to prison. By making sure I stayed out of it. Sophia looked around the room, at the men who'd drawn guns, at her father's devastated face, at Elena's steady gaze. I'm the only one here who sees clearly. You're all dinosaurs, and I'm the meteor. DeLuca's voice cut through the chaos. Except you're not. You're just a girl playing at Revolution without understanding the rules. Sophia turned on him. I understand the rules better than you think. I know this room is surrounded by federal agents waiting for a signal. I know that wire was recording everything you've said for the last 20 minutes. And I know that unless you let me walk out of here right now, I'm going to give that signal and every person at this table goes down tonight. Then give it. DeLuca's voice was calm. Call your friends. Let them storm in. Because I guarantee you've already said enough on that wire to implicate yourself in conspiracy, racketeering, and about 6 other felonies. You think you're playing chess, Sophia, but you're actually playing chicken, and you're about to lose. Sophia's hand moved to her phone. Elena's moved to her purse. Time stretched, suspended in the moment before violence. Then James Torino spoke, voice heavy with resignation. Sophia, don't. Dad, don't. He looked at DeLuca. My daughter made a mistake. A stupid, reckless mistake. But she's my daughter. What do you want? DeLuca considered. The wire, her phone, and her out of the city by sunrise. She doesn't come back, doesn't contact anyone here, doesn't speak to law enforcement. She disappears. In exchange, this ends tonight and your family maintains our existing relationship. Not the partnership, just the status quo. That's exile, Sophia said. That's mercy. DeLuca's eyes were cold. Take it or leave it. But decide fast because my patience is running out. Sophia looked at her father, at the room, at Elena. For a moment, Elena saw beneath the armor, a woman who'd gambled everything and lost, who'd tried to outthink a room full of people who'd been playing this game since before she was born. Fine, Sophia whispered. She removed the wire, handed it to DeLuca along with her phone. You win. No one wins tonight, DeLuca said. We just don't all lose. James took his daughter's arm gently this time. Come on, let's go. They walked out, Sophia's head high despite everything. The door closed behind them. The room stayed frozen for another 30 seconds. Then Calabrese laughed, a shocked sound. Well, he said, that was different. That was a fucking nightmare, one of the Morettis said. We need to sweep this whole place for additional devices. Check everyone. They did. It took an hour, but they found nothing else. The wire had been Sophia's only play. By the time Elena and DeLuca left, it was nearly midnight. In the car, neither spoke for a long time. You knew, Elena finally said, about the wire. You knew before we walked in. I suspected. Had someone check her when she arrived. They found it. DeLuca looked out the window. But I had to let it play out. Had to let her think she was winning so everyone else could see what she really was. You humiliated her in front of her father. Well, I saved her life. Half the men in that room wanted to kill her the second we found the wire. James, too, for raising her. The exile was the compromise. Elena thought about Sophia's face, the flash of desperation under the confidence. What happens to her now? She disappears. Changes her name. Starts over somewhere far from here. DeLuca's voice was flat. Same thing you did, except she did it to herself. And the investigation, the cops she was working with? Without her cooperation, it's dead. They've got nothing. She was their only inside source. He looked at her. You did good tonight. The clause reading? That was smart. Gave me the opening I needed. I didn't do it for you. I know, you did it for you because you're starting to understand how this works. He pulled out his phone. I promised you information about your family. You want it now or later? Elena's heart jumped. Now. DeLuca pulled up files, photos. The fire wasn't mob business. It was personal. Your father had been investigating corruption at the Port Authority, looking into fraudulent contracts. He found something. Evidence that a state senator was taking kickbacks from construction companies. Big money, serious charges. Which senator? Richard Morrison. The name hit like a punch. Morrison, like Detective Morrison, who Sophia was talking to, his uncle. Richard Morrison was the senator your father was about to expose. He had your family killed to silence him and bury the evidence. DeLuca's voice was gentle now. I'm sorry, Elena. I know that's not what you wanted to hear. Elena felt numb. 3 years of not knowing, and the answer was so simple, so mundane. Not a mob war, not ancient grudges, just corruption and cover-up. What happened to the senator? Died of a heart attack 6 months after the fire. Natural causes, officially. Though natural is relative when you're under that kind of stress. DeLuca handed her a folder. Everything's in there. Evidence your father collected, my people's investigation, connections between Morrison and the families he was taking money from. You can do whatever you want with it. Elena took the folder with shaking hands. Why give this to me? Because you earned it, and because everyone deserves to know their story. He paused. Also because I need you to understand something. This world, it's not good or evil. It's just complicated. Your father was a good man doing the right thing, and he died for it. Senator Morrison was corrupt, and he died of stress. Sophia tried to burn everything down, and now she's running. Everyone's trying to survive, and survival makes people do ugly things. Is that supposed to make me feel better? It's supposed to make you understand why I am the way I am, why I play the games I play. Because the alternative is ending up like your father, dead and forgotten, with no one to avenge you. The car stopped outside the warehouse. Elena looked at the folder in her hands, at the gun in her purse, at the man across from her who'd just given her both truth and weapons. What now? She asked. Now you decide what you want. Stay in New York, work with me, build something real. Or take that information, disappear again, try to start fresh somewhere else. Either way, you're not invisible anymore. You're a person with choices. Elena thought about Sophia's offer, power, and alliance. About DeLuca's offer, protection and partnership. About her own offer to herself 3 years ago, survival through invisibility. All of them were lies in their own way. All of them were true. I need time, she said. Take it. But Elena, whatever you decide, do it because you want to, not because you're afraid. He opened the car door. Fear's a terrible compass. She got out, folder clutched tight, and watched him drive away. Inside the warehouse, Elena spread the documents on the floor. Photos of her parents, young and smiling. Evidence folders detailing Morrison's corruption. News clippings about the fire. Her whole history laid out in paper and ink. She sat in the middle of it all and let herself cry for the first time in 3 years. Not because she was sad, though she was. Not because she was angry, though she was that too. But because she finally knew. And knowing, she realized, was its own kind of power. Elena spent 3 days in that warehouse, surrounded by the evidence of her old life. She read every document twice, memorized names and dates, traced connections until her eyes burned. The gun stayed on the table beside her, untouched but present. Margaret brought food she barely ate and coffee she drank cold. On the 4th morning, she made her decision. She called DeLuca. I need to see Detective Morrison. Silence on the other end. Then, that's a terrible idea. Probably. Can you arrange it? Elena, can you? Another pause. Yes, but I'm coming with you. No, this is mine. Then you're not doing it. His voice was firm. Morrison's dirty. Not like his uncle was, but dirty enough. He's also connected and paranoid. You walk in alone demanding answers about a 3-year-old case, he'll either arrest you on some bullshit charge or make you disappear. With me there, he has to play it straight. Elena wanted to argue, but he was right. Fine. Set it up. The meeting happened 2 days later in a diner in Queens, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like dishwater. Morrison was already there when they arrived, sitting in the back corner, detective shield visible on his belt like a warning. He was younger than Elena expected, maybe 40, with tired eyes and the kind of posture that came from too many years carrying other people's sins. He didn't stand when they approached. DeLuca, he said, and the mysterious Miss Voss, or should I say Santoro. Elena's stomach dropped. DeLuca's hand found the small of her back, steadying. You've been doing homework, DeLuca said, sliding into the booth across from Morrison. Elena sat beside him. It's my job. And when a dead woman starts working for you, I get curious. Morrison's gaze fixed on Elena. Your father was a good man, stubborn, righteous, the kind of pain in the ass we need more of. I'm sorry about what happened to him. Are you? Elena's voice was harder than she felt. Because your uncle ordered the hit. Morrison's jaw tightened. My uncle was a corrupt piece of shit who destroyed everything he touched, including my career. When he died, I spent a year being investigated by internal affairs just for being related to him. So no, I'm not sorry he's dead. I am sorry about your family. That's convenient. He's not around to contradict you. Elena, DeLuca warned quietly. But Morrison shook his head. No, she's right to be angry. She's also right about what happened. My uncle had your father killed because Antonio Santoro was about to expose a kickback scheme that would have sent half the Port Authority to prison, including Richard Morrison. He pulled out a folder, slid it across the table. I've been building a case against the people who actually carried out the hit. It's taken 3 years, but I'm close. Elena opened the folder. Names she didn't recognize. Surveillance photos. Financial records. Why are you telling me this? Because I need your help. Morrison leaned forward. The men who killed your family work for Carlo Vega. You know that name? DeLuca went very still. Vega's been dead for a year. His organization isn't. His nephew, Michael, took over. And Michael's been consolidating power by eliminating anyone connected to his uncle's old messes, including witnesses, including evidence, including loose ends like the Santoro hit. Morrison looked at Elena. You're a loose end. If Michael Vega figures out you're alive, he'll finish what his uncle started. So you want to use her as bait, DeLuca said, voice cold. Lure Vega out, make an arrest, close your case. And if she gets killed in the process, well, at least you tried. I want to protect her by putting Vega away before he finds her. Morrison's voice rose slightly. You think I like this? Using a victim to catch her family's killers? But she's the only connection we have. Her testimony about her father's investigation, combined with the evidence I've gathered, is enough to put Vega away for life. You're assuming he goes to trial, DeLuca said. Men like Vega don't go quietly. Men like Vega don't expect dead girls to come back and testify. Morrison looked at Elena again. I know it's asking a lot. I know you've already lost everything. But this is your chance to make it mean something. To make sure no one else's family burns because of these people. Elena felt DeLuca's eyes on her, waiting for her decision. She thought about her father, about the evidence he'd died collecting, about her mother, who'd probably known nothing until the smoke started, about 3 years of running and hiding and pretending to be invisible. What would I have to do? She asked. No, DeLuca said immediately. Absolutely not. It's not your decision. Like hell it isn't. You work for me, which means you don't get to volunteer for suicide missions without clearing it first. Morrison smiled grimly. Trouble in paradise? Shut up, DeLuca and Elena said in unison. Elena turned to face DeLuca fully. You gave me that folder. You gave me the truth. You said I could decide what to do with it, so let me decide. Deciding to help means deciding to die. Vega's got resources, connections. He'll come at you with everything. Then I'll need protection. Good thing I know someone who specializes in that. DeLuca stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed, a short, sharp sound. You're serious? Oh, completely. You're insane. Probably. Elena looked at Morrison. How would this work? Morrison outlined the plan. Elena would surface publicly, file a formal statement with the DA's office about her father's investigation. The statement would be sealed, but word would leak. It always did. Vega would hear that a witness to his uncle's crimes was cooperating with authorities. He'd either run, which would trigger warrants and manhunts, or he'd try to eliminate the threat. Either way, law enforcement would be ready. And what happens to me during all this? Elena asked. Protective custody? Safe house? Armed guards? The works. Police safe houses leak like sieves, DeLuca said. I've got better options. Morrison's eyes narrowed. I'm not letting a civilian contractor protect a state witness. You don't have a choice. She's not doing this without my involvement. Non-negotiable. They stared at each other, two men used to winning, neither willing to back down. Elena spoke before it escalated. I'll do it, but on my terms. I give my statement, I cooperate fully. But DeLuca's people handle my security until Vega's either arrested or dead. Detective Morrison gets his case, I get real protection. Everyone wins. Except you're still a target, DeLuca muttered. I've been a target for 3 years. At least now I'm fighting back. Morrison considered, then nodded. Fine, but any hint that DeLuca's organization is interfering with the investigation, this deal ends and she goes into official custody. Agreed, Elena said before DeLuca could object. They shook on it. An alliance of convenience between a cop, a criminal, and a dead girl who just decided to haunt her killers. The next week moved fast. Elena gave her statement to an assistant DA who looked young enough to be in college. The questions were exhaustive. Everything her father had told her, documents he'd shown her, conversations she'd overheard. She'd been 17 at the time, not particularly interested in her father's crusade against corruption. But memory was funny. Under pressure, details emerged. Names, dates, specific allegations about contract fraud and bribery. The ADA's eyes got wider with each revelation. "This is substantial," she said finally. "This could bring down more than just Vega. This could trigger a full investigation into Port Authority contracting going back a decade." "Good," Elena said. "My father died for this. Might as well make it count." By Friday, word had leaked, not through official channels, those stayed locked down, but through the network of lawyers, clerks, and cops who traded gossip like currency. By Saturday, Elena's new identity was blown. Someone had connected Elena Voss to Elena Santoro, and the Whisper network was buzzing. DeLuca moved her again, this time to a penthouse apartment in a building he owned in the financial district. Armed security in the lobby, cameras on every floor, bulletproof windows. It felt like a gilded cage. "How long do we wait?" Elena asked on the third night, staring out at the Manhattan skyline. "Until Vega makes a move or Morrison makes an arrest, whichever comes first." DeLuca was working through paperwork at the dining table, his own version of coping with stress. "You holding up okay?" "I've been better." "You could still back out. Say you were confused, recant the statement. Morrison would be pissed, but you'd be safe." "Safety's overrated." Elena turned from the window. "You taught me that." "I taught you that visibility is power. I didn't teach you to volunteer for martyrdom." "What's the difference?" He set down his pen, looking at her properly. "Martyrs die for causes. Powerful people make others die for them. Big difference." "Philosophical. Practical." He stood, crossing to the bar. "Drink?" "Why not? Everything else about this situation is surreal." He poured 2 glasses of whiskey, handed her one. They drank in silence, the city glittering below like scattered diamonds. "Can I ask you something?" Elena said. "Depends on the question." "Why did you really help me? The whole truth, not the business answer." DeLuca considered the question, swirling his drink. "Because when I was 23, I watched my father beat a man to death for stealing $2,000. Not kill him quickly, beat him slowly, methodically, making him suffer for the insult. And I stood there and watched because that's what you did in this family. You watched, you learned, you became the thing everyone feared." He paused, drinking. "The man had a daughter. She was maybe 15, hiding in the next room. I could see her through the doorway, hands over her mouth, trying not to scream. And when it was over, my father saw her too. He asked me what we should do with witnesses, testing me, seeing if I'd learned the lesson." "What did you do?" Elena asked quietly. "I said she wasn't a threat, that she was just a kid who'd keep her mouth shut out of fear. My father laughed and said I was soft, but he let her go." DeLuca's voice was flat, emotionless. "She killed herself 3 weeks later, jumped off a bridge. Couldn't live with what she'd seen." Elena set down her glass. "So when I saw you at that restaurant, speaking Sicilian like you owned it, looking at me like I was just another customer instead of someone to fear," he shook his head. "I saw that girl, the one I couldn't save. And I thought maybe this time I could do it differently. Not out of guilt, not even out of goodness, just out of the basic human desire to prove I'm not completely my father's son." "That's heavy. You asked for truth." "I did." Elena moved closer. "For what it's worth, I don't think you're your father." "No?" "No, you're smarter, more dangerous, but not cruel. Cruelty requires enjoying suffering. You just accept it as inevitable." DeLuca smiled slightly. "I can't decide if that's a compliment. It's an observation, like you're always making about everyone else." They stood close enough that Elena could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight he carried. For all his power, all his control, Adrian DeLuca was just a man trying to survive his inheritance. Maybe they weren't so different after all. The moment broke when his phone buzzed. He checked it, face hardening. "Morrison, Vega's moving." They tracked his crew to a location in Jersey City. Armed, prepared for something. Morrison thinks it's the hit. On me? On you. DeLuca was already moving, grabbing his jacket, making calls. Stay here. Triple security on this building. Do not leave. Do not let anyone in except me or Margaret. Understand? Where are you going? To make sure Vega doesn't get anywhere near you. He paused at the door. Elena, whatever happens, you stay inside. Promise me. I promise. He left. Elena locked the door behind him, checked the security panel. All green. Guards posted. Building secure. She lasted 20 minutes before the waiting drove her insane. The problem with being safe was that safety meant powerlessness. She'd spent 3 years being safe, and all it had gotten her was more fear. If Vega was coming for her, if this was ending tonight one way or another, she wanted to see it happen. She grabbed the gun DeLuca had given her, checked the magazine. Fully loaded. She'd never actually fired it, but her father's lessons came back like muscle memory. Safety off, finger off the trigger until ready to shoot, aim center mass. The building had a back entrance, service elevator that the guards monitored but couldn't physically block. Elena knew because she'd studied the security patterns, because survival meant always knowing your exits. She took the service elevator down, slipped past the guard during a shift change, and stepped out into the cold November night. Her phone immediately buzzed. DeLuca. She ignored it. The address Morrison had mentioned was in Jersey City, maybe 30 minutes by cab. Elena flagged one down, gave an address 2 blocks away from the actual location. The driver didn't care, barely looked at her. Jersey City at night was all warehouses and empty streets, the kind of area where violence happened quietly and nobody asked questions. Elena paid the driver, waited until he was gone, then walked the remaining 2 blocks. She heard the shouting before she saw anything. A warehouse, lights on inside, visible through dirty windows. Shadows moving fast. Then gunfire, sharp, rapid, overlapping. Elena's training screamed at her to run, to get away, to survive. Instead, she moved closer. Through the window, she saw them. Morrison and 4 other cops pinned behind crates. Across from them, Vega's men, she assumed had to be, returning fire from behind machinery. And in the middle, trying to reach the exit, Adrian DeLuca and 2 of his people. It was a mess, a complete disaster. Someone had moved too early, someone had tipped off the wrong person, and now everyone was trapped in a kill box. Elena circled the building, looking for another entrance. Found one. Service door, unlocked. Stupid, but lucky. Inside the warehouse was chaos. Bullets ricocheting off metal, someone screaming orders, smoke from something burning. She stayed low, moving between crates, trying to orient herself. Hold your fire! That was Morrison's voice, hoarse. Michael Vega, you're surrounded. Come out and nobody else dies tonight. Laughter in response. You think I'm stupid? You brought DeLuca. This was never about arrests. It's about justice for the Santoro family, for everyone your uncle murdered. My uncle was a businessman. The Santoros got in the way. That's not murder. That's evolution. Elena's hands tightened on the gun. There he was. Michael Vega. Maybe 30 feet away, behind an overturned forklift, gun in hand. He was younger than she expected, maybe early 30s, with the kind of face that would be handsome if it wasn't twisted with arrogance. This man had ordered her family burned alive, had sent people to her home, to her mother, to everything she'd loved, because of business, because of evolution. The cold clarity that settled over Elena was almost peaceful. She moved closer, silent on the concrete floor. Vega's attention was on Morrison, on DeLuca's position across the warehouse. He didn't see her approach. Michael Vega, Elena said quietly. He spun, gun coming up. But Elena was faster, 3 years of fear channeled into one moment of action. She fired twice, center mass, exactly like her father had taught her. Vega went down. The warehouse exploded in fresh gunfire. Elena dove behind the forklift, heart hammering. She'd just killed someone. Actually killed someone. The knowledge sat in her chest like ice. Cease fire! Morrison's voice commanding. Vega's down. Everyone hold your positions. The shooting stopped. In the ringing silence, Elena heard footsteps approaching. She raised the gun again, hands shaking now. Elena, DeLuca's voice careful, put the gun down. Is he dead? Yes. You killed him. Now put the gun down before Morrison decides you're a threat. She lowered it slowly. DeLuca appeared around the forklift, taking the weapon from her numb fingers. You promised to stay at the apartment, he said. I lied. Apparently. He pulled her to her feet. Come on. We need to get you out of here before this becomes a crime scene with you in it. But Morrison was already there, badge out, 4 cops behind him. She's not going anywhere. She just killed a man. That's evidence. That's testimony. That's self-defense, DeLuca interrupted. Vega was armed. He shot first. She returned fire. Ask any of your men. They saw it. The cops exchanged glances. One nodded slowly. That's what I saw. Morrison's jaw worked. That's convenient. That's the truth. Check the ballistics. Check the angles. She defended herself. End of story. DeLuca's voice was steel. You got your collar. Vega's organization falls apart without him. The Santoro case closes. You won. Now let her go. I need her statement. Tomorrow, through her lawyer. Tonight, she goes home. DeLuca didn't move, didn't blink. Behind him, his men had appeared flanking, not threatening but present. Morrison looked at Elena. Did he shoot first? Elena thought about her father, about her mother, about 3 years of running. Yes, she said. He shot and I returned fire. It was a lie, but it was also justice. Morrison knew it. She could see it in his eyes. But he also knew that pushing this, here, now, would start a war he couldn't win. Fine, he said finally. But you're done, Miss Santoro. After tonight, you disappear again. New identity, new city, new life. You stay in New York, you're a target for every associate Vega ever had. Understood. Is it? Because you just painted a target on yourself the size of Manhattan. Self-defense or not, you killed a man with connections. That has consequences. Then I'll deal with them. Morrison shook his head. I hope you know what you're doing. I don't, but I'm doing it anyway. He left, taking his men and the crime scene and the body of Michael Vega with him. Within an hour, the warehouse was empty except for Elena and DeLuca and the echoing silence. You shouldn't have come here, DeLuca said finally. Probably not. You could have died, but I didn't. You killed a man. I killed the man who murdered my family. There's a difference. Elena looked at her hands. They'd stopped shaking. Do you think I'm going to hell? I think hell's a myth we tell ourselves to feel better about justice. You did what you had to do. He touched her shoulder, gentle. Come on, let's get you home. Which home? Good question. The apartment's probably not safe anymore. Neither is the warehouse. He thought for a moment. I've got a place upstate, quiet, secure. You could disappear there for a while, figure out your next move. Or you could stop disappearing, stop running, stop hiding. DeLuca's eyes met hers. You're not invisible anymore, Elena. You haven't been for weeks. The only question is what you do with that visibility. Elena thought about Sofia Torino, exiled for trying to grab too much power too fast. About her father, dead for doing the right thing. About herself, caught between who she'd been and who she was becoming. What if I stayed, she asked. Here, with you, working. It's dangerous. Everything's dangerous. At least this way I choose the danger instead of letting it choose me. DeLuca smiled. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. I was just too scared to use it. She took a breath. So, do I have a job or not? You have a job, but we do this right. Legal fronts, legitimate businesses, my organization but cleaner. I've been wanting to shift that direction anyway. You'd help with that. Why the change? Because watching you choose to fight instead of run reminded me that there are other ways to have power. Smarter ways. Ways that don't end with your son standing over bodies wondering if he's become his father. DeLuca offered his hand. Partners. Real partners. Equal stakes. Shared risks. Elena took it. Partners. They shook, sealing an alliance that would have seemed impossible a month ago. 6 months later, Elena stood in the restaurant where it had all started. La Stella Rosa had new ownership now, hers and DeLuca's, purchased through a maze of legitimate shell companies and actual legal paperwork. The staff was new too, though Marco had been offered a management position and taken it. The dining room was full, Customers who knew nothing about the history of the place or the woman who now owned it. Elena moved through the space in a navy suit, checking details, speaking to the chef, ensuring everything ran smoothly. Table 4 needs water, Marco said, passing by with the easy familiarity of someone who'd survived the transition. Elena picked up the crystal pitcher herself. Old habits. Table 4 was occupied by a business meeting, 3 men in suits discussing contracts in low voices. She filled their glasses, keeping her expression professionally neutral. One of them looked up. "Thank you, Miss Santoro," Elena said clearly. "I'm one of the owners. Is everything satisfactory?" "Very much so. Best meal we've had in the city." "I'm glad to hear it. Please let us know if you need anything." She walked away, head high, owning every step. In the back office, DeLuca was reviewing quarterly numbers, sleeves rolled up, reading glasses perched on his nose. "How's the floor?" he asked without looking up. "Smooth. We'll be fully booked through the holidays at this rate." "Good. The expansion into legitimate business is paying off. Who knew actual restaurants could be profitable?" "People who run them honestly," Elena said, sitting across from him. "Margaret called. The contracts for the property in Boston came through. We're clear to proceed." "Boston," DeLuca smiled slightly. "Torino territory. Or it was. Heard Sophia's in Prague now, working in finance, supposedly." "Good for her. Think she's happy?" "I think she's alive. Sometimes that's enough." Elena pulled up her own laptop, reviewing vendor contracts. "We're doing well, really well. Legitimate holdings, clean books, actual profits." "Your father would be horrified." "My father's dead, I'm not." DeLuca closed his laptop. "You ever think about the warehouse? About Vega?" "Sometimes. Usually late at night when I can't sleep." Elena's voice was steady. "I don't regret it, but I think about it. That's normal. It means you're human." "Are you?" "Human, I mean. Jury's still out." He stood, stretching. "I'm heading upstate this weekend, the place by the lake. You should come." "Is this a business trip or it's a weekend off? Something we both need. No agenda, no meetings, just time away from the city." Elena considered. 6 months of partnership had been professional, careful, bounded by clear rules. But lately, something had shifted. Looked at her differently, she looked back. "Okay," she said. "I'll come." "Yeah?" "Yeah, but I drive." "Your car screams, 'Please, rob me.'" DeLuca laughed. "Deal." That weekend, they drove north in Elena's practical sedan, leaving the city behind. The house by the lake was simple. 2 bedrooms, a dock, surrounded by trees that had already lost their leaves to early winter. They spent Saturday morning in companionable silence, Elena reading while DeLuca fished off the dock with equipment that looked expensive but unused. "Catch anything?" she called after an hour. "My patience. Does that count?" "Not really." He reeled in the empty line, gave up. They had lunch on the porch, sandwiches and beer, nothing fancy. The kind of meal Elena's parents used to make on summer weekends before everything burned. "Can I ask you something personal?" DeLuca said eventually. "Depends." "What would your father think of all this? You working with someone like me?" Elena thought about Antonio Santoro, about his crusade against corruption, his belief in justice and truth. Honestly, he'd hate it. He'd think I sold out, chose comfort over principles. "And what do you think?" "I think my father's principles got him killed. I think the world's more complicated than right and wrong, legal and illegal. I think survival requires compromise." She looked at DeLuca. "But I also think there are lines. Things I won't do, even for money or safety. You've respected that. So maybe I'm not my father, but I'm not betraying him either. I'm just choosing a different path." That's a mature answer. "I've had a year to think about it. Gives you perspective." Elena set down her beer. "What about you? You happy with how things turned out?" "Happy's a big word. But satisfied?" "Yeah. We built something real, something that works. That's more than most people in this world can say." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set over the lake, painting everything gold and red. That night, Elena lay in bed listening to the water lap against the dock, thinking about everything that had changed. A year ago, she'd been invisible, afraid, running from shadows. Now she owned restaurants, had legitimate power, commanded respect. She'd killed the man who murdered her family and survived the aftermath. She'd chosen visibility and made it work. The door to her room opened quietly. DeLuca stood in the doorway, backlit by hallway light. "Can't sleep either?" he asked. "Too quiet. I'm used to city noise now." He came in, sat on the edge of the bed. "You did good, Elena, this year. Everything you built. I just wanted you to know that. We built it. Together." "Yeah, we did." He looked at her, and something passed between them. Understanding, recognition, the acknowledgement of shared survival. Elena sat up. "Adrian," he kissed her. Gentle at first, then deeper, like a question and answer all at once. When they broke apart, Elena laughed softly. "That's probably a bad idea." "Probably, but we've built a career on bad ideas that worked out." "Fair point." They spent the night tangled together, two people who'd survived their own hells finding comfort in shared damage. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was real. And real, Elena had learned, was rarer than anything. The next morning, they drove back to the city, to their restaurants and their empire, and their carefully constructed legitimate life. Elena looked at Manhattan's skyline as they approached, all glass and steel and possibility. "You know what's funny?" she said. "What?" "A year ago, I would have done anything to stay invisible. Now I can't imagine going back. Power's addictive that way. It's not about power, it's about choice, about being seen as myself instead of hiding." She smiled. "I spent 3 years being Elena Voss, the invisible waitress. Now I'm Elena Santoro, and people actually know my name. That matters." "It does," DeLuca agreed. They pulled up to La Stella Rosa. Elena got out, smoothing her jacket, preparing for another night of managed chaos and controlled success. A couple walked past, arguing about dinner plans. A homeless man asked for change. A tourist took photos of the restaurant's facade. Normal city life. Normal people. And Elena Santoro, no longer hiding among them, but standing above, owning her space, claiming her place in a world that had tried to erase her. She walked through the front door of her restaurant, and the staff straightened slightly. Not out of fear, out of respect. "Good evening, Miss Santoro," the hostess said. "Good evening, Anna. How are we looking tonight?" "Fully booked. Waiting list of 20. "Excellent. Let's make sure everyone has a perfect experience." Elena moved through the dining room, greeting regulars, checking on new customers, ensuring everything ran with the precision she demanded. She saw DeLuca at the bar, speaking with Calabrese about some business venture. She saw Marco managing the servers with competence he'd earned. She saw Margaret in the corner reviewing paperwork, still working after all these years. And she saw herself reflected in the window, confident, present, powerful. No longer the invisible girl at table 4, no longer running, hiding, afraid. Just Elena Santoro, who'd survived fire and death and betrayal, who'd killed her family's murderer and built an empire from the ashes, who'd learned that the most dangerous woman in the room was the one nobody expected. She'd earned every inch of this life, every scar, every victory, every hard-won piece of respect. And she was just getting started. Outside, the city hummed with a million stories, a million lives intersecting and diverging. But inside La Stella Rosa, at the table where it had all begun, Elena Santoro poured wine for customers who had no idea they were being served by a woman who'd clawed her way back from death itself. She smiled, professional and perfect, and moved on to the next table. The invisible girl was gone. In her place stood a queen, and queens, Elena had learned, didn't apologize for taking up space. They just ruled.